Hello, and welcome to Everyday Adventures in Cooking with Rick. I'm Rick. So this is a new cooking show that we're creating to hopefully bring some new and exciting recipes to you, some everyday cooking, easy recipes. For me, it's just going to be fun. I love to cook, and I love to be with people and talk to people, so this is going to be a great thing for both of us, hopefully. Why am I doing this, and who am I? I'm not a professional chef. I'm just a home cook who loves to cook. I love to cook for a few reasons. I love to eat. And food to me is memories. I grew up in a very large family where we had a lot of gatherings, and food was kind of the glue that brought everyone together. And so I have a lot of great food memories, and I create new memories. We're always creating new memories, having friends and family over around the dinner table. And so I love to cook for those reasons. What are we going to do here? I'm going to try and cook things that I would cook every day, things that are simple, easy for you to cook. Hopefully you enjoy watching this program. I know we're going to have a great time making it, and maybe you'll learn something. And with your comments and suggestions, maybe we'll learn something. And really, that's it. Hopefully we're just going to have a good time cooking together here in the kitchen. So for our first episode, this being our first episode, I thought, what is my greatest food memory? And for me, it is growing up having Sunday dinners, first at my great-grandmother's house, then my grandmother and mother, and the whole family getting together, having Sunday dinner. And for hours sitting around the table and talking, singing, laughing, playing cards, all the things that the dinner started but turned into a great family event. And every Sunday, we would have basically the same thing. And if you grew up in a large Italian family, you probably had the same thing. Pasta, sauce, meatballs, bread, salad, desserts, little variations on all that, but that was the basic meal every Sunday from the time I can remember till now. My family still continues that tradition. So today that's what we're going to do. We're going to make the sauce and the meatballs for the traditional Sunday sauce. Some people call it gravy, we called it sauce. And we're going to start with that, and then over multiple episodes create the entire meal. Okay, so here for our first episode of cooking, we're going to make homemade meatballs and tomato sauce. The same way my mother and grandmother would have every Sunday that I can remember. I'm going to say it's hard for me to believe that I'm on the internet making these meatballs because, to be honest with you, these are the best meatballs in the world. Now, I grew up in a family, all my brothers and sisters are good cooks, and we're kind of competitive with our cooking, and meatballs are a real point of contention, who makes the best ones. I'm telling you right now, these are the best. They're going to disagree if they watch the show, but I don't believe them. So, what do we need to make these meatballs? First thing you need is ground beef. This is 3 pounds, the 80-20, no lean. You need a little bit of fat in there for the flavor. Ground beef. We've got some plain breadcrumbs, fresh parsley, fresh garlic, some salt and pepper, eggs, and really good Pecorino Romano cheese. I'll talk about this a lot. Quality ingredients are important. Cheese is probably the most important, to buy really good cheese. That stuff in the cardboard container in the grocery store is not cheese. Don't buy that. Sorry if that's what you use, but it just doesn't have the flavor that this cheese has. So how do we start? Because we're going to be mixing raw meat, I want to have everything ready to go so I'm not constantly having to wash my hands every 2 seconds, going back and forth between that. So I've got most of my stuff ready here, but what I am going to do, I'm going to bake these in the oven. So I have a large pan that I'm going to put them in. I want to get the pan ready so when I start mixing, they just go right in there. So I'm just going to put a little olive oil in the pan, and just to coat the bottom of the pan so the meatballs don't stick in the beginning. So we're just going to put a little olive oil in there and mix that around, just to kind of coat the bottom of the pan. Making a lot of noise there. And have that ready to go. So with the meat, I don't want to work the meat mixture a lot. It makes the meatballs tough. So what I like to do is kind of spread the meat out in the bowl. And so when I'm putting the ingredients in, I have to do less mixing to incorporate the ingredients into the mixture. And the first thing I'm going to put in there is a little bit of salt and pepper right onto the meat. Not Not too much of the salt because the cheese has a lot of salt in it. Some black pepper right in there. The breadcrumbs, these are just plain breadcrumbs, no seasoning, because I don't know what they put in those seasonings in there, so I want to know what I'm putting in here. So we're going to put some breadcrumbs in there. Okay. Then, for 3 pounds of meat, I use 3 eggs. So actually, I'm going to use the same bowl here. We're going to crack 3 eggs into this bowl. Look at this. I'm not used to cooking on camera, so we'll get over this. We're going to put these right in because we want to mix these up first. You want to mix the eggs up first so that you're not getting bits and pieces of yolk or whatever. You want everything to be incorporated evenly throughout the meat mixture. That's why I mix them up first. And the shells, we don't throw them in the garbage. They go right into our compost bin. They're going to go in the garden later. Eggshells are very good for your garden. I don't know why really, but they tell me they're really good for the garden, so that's what the experts say. So we're going to mix these up. But before I put these in there, the other thing we're going to need is some garlic. Every good recipe has garlic in it. So we're going to cut up some garlic. Now, I use a separate cutting board when I'm doing the garlic. I don't like to cut them on the wooden cutting board that I use. The taste of the garlic gets in there, so if I'm rolling out dough or something else, I like to have that cutting board without the garlic in there. So we're going to just smash our garlic on there, get the skins off. And you'll see, I tend to be a little messy when I cook. And that's kind of, my wife can tell you that that's something I'm really good at it, making a mess. Oh, smell of garlic, it's fantastic. So we're just going to smash this garlic up. And as you do that, you can really smell the garlic because the oils in the garlic are coming out as you smash them up. And we're going to try and chop this small. All right. And once we have that chopped up, we're going to throw that right in there. Beautiful. So the next thing we're going to put in is fresh parsley. Now, normally I would get this out of my garden. But my garden, it's the winter here in the Northeast, so I don't have fresh parsley. So I go to the store and buy it. But fresh is so much better than using the dried ingredients if you can do it. And as you can see, I have some fresh parsley here that I got. I cut it up. And we want to chop that, small enough where you don't have really big chunks of parsley in your meatballs. I'll move this out of the way. And you can see I have quite a bit. It's about a cup of parsley. You know, growing up, there was no measuring. I didn't really see my mother or my grandmother measuring. They just kind of knew what to do. But this is approximately a cup of chopped parsley. We're going to put that right in there. So the last 2 ingredients we have here, we've had our eggs and we have our cheese. We're going to do about a cup of the fresh, this is Pecorino Romano cheese. All right, so we're going to get about a cup in there. And if you put too much, you can never have too much of that. Put that over here. And, oh, I almost forgot. Need some olive oil in there. You got to put a couple of tablespoons of olive oil in there. And then our eggs. And that'll be the last. Because once I put this in, now my hands are going to get in there. And so we really can't be touching anything else. So we're going to just move this over. This goes right into our compost bin. We're going to put our eggs in. Now it's time to get our hands dirty. what I did, I told you before, I got my pan ready, so once I make the meatballs, I'm transferring them right into the pan and I shouldn't have to touch anything else. I have my oven preheating at 350 degrees. So now we're just going to get our hands in there and start mixing this up. And again, you don't want to really overwork this because it will make the meatballs stiff. All right, but we're just trying to incorporate everything together in there. And it's not, the breadcrumbs are there, you know, they're as a binder, just like the eggs, they help to bind everything together. You don't want too much breadcrumbs in this because then it just doesn't have the right texture. Not a meatball anymore, I guess it's just a bread ball. But every Sunday morning, I can remember this was the ritual that my family would do. The meatballs would be made, the sauce, and in preparation for the big meal when everybody came over. And that could be just the immediate family, but there was always seemed to be extra aunts and uncles and cousins that showed up for dinner every Sunday. And this tradition continued every Sunday until my mother passed away. We never missed a Sunday dinner. Okay. So as you can see, it's starting to look, you can see that everything's incorporated. There's not big chunks of meat without the other ingredients in there. And once you get this, now we can start forming them. Probably, I don't know what size, I guess a little bit bigger than a golf ball. Something like that. All right. And you're just going to take it in your hand, take a little bit. Again, we never measured. I never saw anybody measure how much to take out. Just roll them up, the ball, right into the pan. This probably will make at least a couple dozen or more meatballs. And they're very popular, so you want to have a lot of meatballs for everybody. And we're going to put these all together and then put them in the oven at 350 degrees. So we're almost done rolling these up. And you know, growing up, when my mother or my grandmother would make these, they would always fry them in a pan on the stovetop. And that's the way I always did them. But then that makes a big mess. It's a lot of work. Baking them in the oven, I think, is as good and a lot easier. And my mother, who made meatballs for over 50 years, still never thought it was right every time. And every time she'd make meatballs, she'd have to take a little bit off and cook it in the microwave or on the stove and test it, because she said, something seems to be missing. She always thought there was something missing, and it wasn't quite right. So here we have our meatballs all done. And out of this, we ended up with 2 dozen meatballs, all right, which probably isn't enough, because in my family, that's never enough. But we're going to now put this, we have our oven preheated at 350 degrees. We're going to throw this in. I don't want to touch everything with my hands that aren't cleaned yet. So we're just going to open this up, put these in, and they're going to cook for probably about 40-45 minutes. Halfway through, I'll probably go in with a spatula and move them around a little bit so that they get evenly browned all the way around. And then you're going to have the best meatballs in the world. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start our tomato sauce that we're going to put the meatballs in after. Okay, now we're going to start the tomato sauce. This is sauce that was made on Sundays. You know, maybe during the week you might have a quick marinara sauce or something, but the Sunday sauce was a whole experience, something that took hours to make. And one of the things that always started the sauce was pork chops or some type of pork, because it flavors the sauce. So my mother, my grandmother would always get maybe 2, 3, either pork ribs, pork chops, something to cook, and that would start the cooking process. Now, this was not to serve necessarily. These pork chops were to flavor the sauce. As the sauce was served later, if you were lucky enough to get one of these little morsels of the pork, that was like a little bonus. It's really there to flavor the sauce. So I've got here just a couple bone-in pork chops. I've got a good amount of fat on them, which is what you want to get the flavor into the sauce. So we're going to start the sauce by browning these now. So I've got a large pot to start the sauce in. We're going to get that going on a medium heat. We're going to throw just a little bit of olive oil in there so they don't stick to the bottom. tablespoon or two. Then we're going to throw our pork chops right into the pan and get them browning. Nothing fancy here. Okay, so we've got our 2 pork chops in the pan. They stick a little bit, that's okay. Once the pork chops start to cook and the fat from the pork chops render off, it's going to add so much flavor to the sauce. So we're going to let those go probably 3 minutes or so on each side. So we're going to just cover that up a little bit to keep them from splattering all over the kitchen. And let's go over and get the rest of our ingredients ready for the sauce. Okay, the other thing that goes into the sauce wouldn't be Sunday sauce without some sausage. And this is from a local company that makes their sausage fresh every day. And we've got just regular sweet sausage. I prefer the hot sausage, but you don't know who's coming over for dinner. So I decided to go with the sweet. Some people don't like the extra heat that's in that sausage. So we've got another pan going here that we're going to fry that sausage up, and then we'll put it in the sauce after it's cooked. And again, all these things together, the pork, the meatballs, the sausage, all add incredible flavor to the sauce. So we're just going to put this right in the pan. So the pork chops are getting nice and brown on one side, which is what we want. We're going to flip those over. Get them brown on the other side. That smells good. One of the things, it's funny with the Sunday dinner being prepared, this would start early in the morning. So as kids, it was like torture all day long to smell this cooking. And going in the kitchen, if mom wasn't looking, you'd grab some bread, sneak some sauce out, because to smell this all day long and not be able to eat it, it really was something. So our sausage is cooking. So now what we're going to do is start getting our ingredients ready for the sauce. And we have to chop more garlic. Everything has to have garlic in it. So let's get some garlic chopped up. All right. So same thing, we're going to save all of this to put into our compost bin. And everything that I compost in my compost bin will end up in my garden outside. Rather than going in the garbage, it's only going to make the garden better. And I also grow garlic in my garden, but I've used it all up, so I had to go buy garlic. I guess I didn't plant enough, or I eat too much garlic, one or the other, I'm not sure. So we'll get this. So once those pork chops are completely browned, you're going to have a nice, the pork fat and the olive oil at the bottom that we're going to saute the garlic in just for a couple of minutes. You never want to burn the garlic because it'll give it a bitter flavor. And you want to draw the flavor out of the garlic by heating it up so that it'll get into the sauce. All right, so we got our garlic chopped, a little bit on the floor, that's okay. The dog will pick that up later. Okay, so let's check those pork chops. After the pork chops are browned, you're going to take them out of the pan and you're going to put them off to the side. We're going to use those later in the sauce when it's cooking. Next, we're going to add our chopped garlic into the pan. We may have to add a little more olive oil in the pan, but you've got the nice rendered fat from the pork chops in there, which is going to add a lot of flavor. And so now don't have the heat too high on this because you'll burn the garlic. So you want to keep that heat on a low to medium. Add your chopped garlic, and you're going to let that just cook long enough where you can really start to smell the garlic and get the flavor of the garlic into the oil. So once that garlic really starts to have an aroma, you really start to smell it, but you don't want to brown it. If you start browning it and burning it, it'll get bitter. Next, we're going to add some tomato paste. So we're going to add a can of tomato paste, a small can of tomato paste, and we're going to add that right into the oil and the garlic, and we're going to saute that tomato paste a little bit in the garlic and oil. And that's right, we're going to get every little bit out. We're going to stir that up and let that cook for just a couple of minutes, just to kind of mix with the oil and the garlic. just to get all those flavors to mix together. Then we'll add our tomatoes. Now for your tomatoes, you can use any kind of tomato you want. Pureed, crushed, diced. I have 3 large cans here. These are crushed tomato. I didn't realize when I bought them, these happen to be an extra thick tomato, so we are going to have to add some extra water to this at the end. But I've got 3 large cans going in there into the sauce. What I'm going to do is we've got to get all the tomato out of the can. There's a lot of tomatoes left in the can, so we want to make sure we get every bit of the tomatoes out of there. You can see how thick this is. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some water into the cans to get all that tomato out of the can. Don't want to waste any. We're going to need at least 2 full cans of water, I would think, in this, into the sauce, seeing how thick it is. And remember, this sauce is going to cook for a few hours, quite a few hours. So you'll get a lot of evaporation. So you need that water in there, or else the sauce will become way too thick. Okay, after we've added all the tomatoes and the water, we're going to add some salt. And the amount of salt you add depends on how much salt is in the tomato. Some canned tomatoes come with salt, some don't. I've got a couple of teaspoons of salt in there, probably some black pepper. We're going to mix that in there. And then one of the most important ingredients is basil. Now, if you're lucky enough to be able to have a garden like I have in the summer, you can use fresh basil right from the garden. You can also get some fresh basil from the grocery store. A lot of the grocery stores sell it now all year long. You can use dried basil. That's fine. It is a little bit different flavor. And obviously there's nothing like fresh. So if I can, I like to use fresh basil. And then we're just going to stir that in. And then we're going to let that sauce cook. All right, so the other ingredient that goes into the sauce is some wine. It does add a nice flavor to the sauce, and the alcohol will cook out as the sauce cooks, but it definitely adds another depth of flavor to the sauce. And it's just something that, I don't know, was always done. There was always about a cup of wine that was thrown into the sauce. This is just a red table wine, nice dry red wine. This happens to be one, a Montepulciano Vino Noble that actually I was fortunate enough, my wife and I were fortunate enough to go to Italy and got this at a small vineyard in Montepulciano. But we're going to put about a cup of wine into the sauce, maybe half a cup, whatever you feel like. We're going to put a little bit in here because we want to make sure that it's good. All right. Salud. Yeah, it's excellent. No. Excellent, excellent. Now we're going to stir that in. And our sausage is browned. So we're going to take that. And we are going to, that's going to go into the sauce. So let's get that off. We're going to take that over here. We're going to cut this up into smaller pieces. Always seems to go smoother on Martha Stewart, or one of the professional chefs does it. And we're going to bring this right over to the sauce. Those are going to cook right in the sauce. The pork chops are going to go back in. There we go. Extra flavor. And now this sauce will cook. Again, once the meatballs are done, they're going to go in there, and then it'll cook 3-4 hours, and it's going to be perfect. So we're about halfway through the cooking of the meatballs, You can see they're starting to get nice and brown, but we're going to turn them over so that they cook evenly on the top and bottom, and we hopefully get a nice crust, some browning on the bottom, on the top, and then when they go in the sauce, they'll actually hold together better and have a nice crunch to them, a little bit of texture to them when we put them in the sauce. So I think our meatballs are done. Let's take a look. Oh yeah. So you can see they're nice and brown. Got a little bit of a crunch to them now, a little crust, adds a nice texture. So we're going to take those now and put them right into the sauce. Although now that I'm looking at this, I think I miscalculated. There's no way I'm going to fit those into that pan. So I'm going to have to now switch this to a larger pan to be able to get those meatballs in there. So now I've switched to a bigger pot so we can put the meatballs in here. So we're going to gently put these meatballs in there because we don't want them to break in the sauce. And what will happen is we'll now have these will cook. Again, it would cook, a good 3-4 hours during the day. And all right, we're gonna just, again, that's not the way we would do it in real life. I'm trying to be nice on TV or on the YouTube, but we're just gonna push these in there. Now everything's in there. We've got the sausage, the pork, the meatballs, and we're going to let this cook for a while. And we'll check this again right before, at the end, to make sure that the seasonings are right. We have enough salt in there, and but we're going to let that cook for a couple hours now. Let everything come together, and this is the beginning of our Sunday meal. That's a wrap on our first episode. I'm glad you were here to watch. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, or at least it brought back some food memories for you. I hope you'll go down and like us or comment, leave comments. Maybe tell us what your favorite food memory is, what your favorite recipes are. We're going to come back with another episode where we're going to be making fresh pasta to go with this sauce. So please stay tuned for that. And if you have ideas, suggestions, comments, please leave them. We're having a great time doing this, but it'd be even better if we know that we're have people watching and interacting with us. So thank you for watching episode 1. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Ciao.